Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our next session of the program, which is an executive interview with a beneficiary of Collins Aerospace Youth Development Initiatives, and she will tell us about her journey. Her name is Erin Michelle. Erin Michelle is a manufacturing engineer in new product introduction at Collins Aerospace in Melbourne. She started with Collins as a business development intern in 2015 and has held roles in finance, logistics, and manufacturing since then. The session will be moderated by Ms. Edith Itashiri, Commercial Manager, Swissport Kenya. Edith is an aviation management professional with over 17 years diverse experience in the aviation industry, covering different aspects from operations to administration. Edith is passionate and curious about life and all things aviation, and she continuously works on growing her experience in building skills, in developing and managing processes, understanding the aviation industry. And before we start the interview, which will run for the next 40 minutes, allow me to play a video on some of Collins Aerospace initiatives.
Although it had to be virtual because
the statistics are not good. Only 13% of engineers are women.
Well, Discover E works to provide hands-on engineering experiences to kids at a young age. And today is Girl Day.
although it had to be virtual because of COVID-19, girls from all over the world participated in events to envision a future with more female engineers.
And to hopefully create more STEMinists.
Today, I'd specifically like to talk about innovation, and more importantly, the process of thinking differently.
So our next question is from Miss Poole's 5th grade class. How did it feel to become an astronaut and have the responsibility to go into space?
Well, how hot do the rockets inside these really cool ejection seats get?
I mean, how are you planning the entire day? I want to know it all. I'm so excited right now.
We just need to continue to encourage girls that they are smart, they can do math and science, and they can be engineers for amazing companies and put people into space and do all these really cool things later in life.
It's very empowering to go into this field where historically it has been more catered to people who don't look like you, but you're still meant to be there, you're still welcome there, and you can still make a difference while you're there.
That's Collins Aerospace Empowering Women in STEM. And that brings us to the start of the session. I hand over to Edith to take us through this exciting interview with Erin. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thanks very much, Maureen, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Erin. I can tell you there's so much excitement between Erin and I here to hear the stories of what Collins has been doing throughout for many years in this program, and Erin will be able to tell us more about it, but let me give you a brief intro about her. Erin is joining us from how many hours behind? I think about 6, so it's very early in the morning for her, from Melbourne in the USA, not to be confused with Australia. And we were just talking a little bit earlier that engineering is not the most exciting thing that most girls or most young people think about aviation. Everybody wants to be a pilot. But I can tell you, when you hear her story and what you've heard from Collins Aerospace video, there's so much more within the industry that you can do, anybody can do within the industry, not just flying, not just cabin crew, there's engineering, product development, there's working on just different parts of the aircraft. And when you get into it, you think, I did that. I was a part of developing that product. So Erin Mitchell is a manufacturing engineer in new product introduction, and she'll be able to tell us what that is about. And started as an intern, as was mentioned before, in 2015, and has worked in different parts of the industry. She started a long-time relationship with Collins Aerospace in 2010 when she joined their First Tech Challenge robotics team and coached teams of fourth graders. And her passion has grown over the years and her community involvement. And she has done quite a lot, including being a treasurer of Reinvented magazine, a print magazine for STEMinists, as I have learned that's their term today, and has done a lot of mentorship for over 300 events and mentored over 1,000 students. But you know what? You're here to hear about Erin. So Erin, tell us a little bit more about how you came into aviation.
Yes, and thank you for the introduction, Edith and Maureen. And again, I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So like both Edith and Maureen said, I'm a manufacturing engineer in new product introduction. So I get to work with all of the new stuff coming into the factory, moving from the prototype of communication, navigation, and surveillance units all the way to full rate production and delivery to customers. So it has been a little bit of a journey to get here, and it starts, like Edith was just saying, all the way back when I was in high school. So I think it was right around 14 when I joined a FIRST robotics team. And a FIRST robotics team really is why I'm an engineer, and it's also the reason I work at Collins Aerospace. I met Collins at a robotics competition when I was 17, and I've been sold ever since. But really, that spark on aviation starts a little bit earlier with a spark in engineering. And like I said, robotics was kind of on a whim for me. I was not really involved in anything else at 14 years old, and I had a friend say, hey, I think you should try this. I think it'd be fun. And when I was 14, I thought I wanted to be an author. I thought I wanted to be a journalist or a news anchor and give people the weather every night. So I initially actually joined the robotics team to work on fundraising and brand development and marketing for the team. But one day, one of my friends who was the programmer on the team was gone, and she basically said, Erin, congratulations, you're the programmer now. And so from there, it quickly spiraled into I ended up being the lead designer on the team, where I really realized that code and design could still flow from my fingertips like words had before, but it was a lot more problem solving that I had the opportunity to experience. So that really is where my spark of engineering got started. And because of Collins's involvement in the FIRST program is why I'm here today. So I met in my senior year of high school, I met Adriana Johnson, who I know is on a later panel today. So I'm excited to make that connection later as well. But it was at a robotics tournament where I was basically told by one of the volunteers there, hey, you should go talk to this company. They do communication and navigation for aircraft all over the world. I think it'd be a really cool opportunity. So we went and my team spoke to them for probably 45 minutes, and we just had a lot of fun. And the volunteers there were having a lot of fun. And you could tell that being at a robotics competition with 900 students ages 14 to 18 was actually something they wanted to do, and they wanted to be there. It wasn't just a we're showing up because our company made us. It was a we want to be here and we want to be involved in these young people's lives. And so that day was the day I realized that I think if a company wants to support people and wants to really develop that talent pipeline, which we'll continue to talk about today, I want to be there when I graduate from college. I want to make sure that the classes I'm taking will get me to a career in aviation and get me to a career at Collins Aerospace. So that was a really, really long summary of how I got sparked into aviation through robotics and through a competition, and it got me to Collins.
You make me want to work for Collins. I mean, it just sounds, and they say that if the hobby, doing whatever you do, if it's a hobby, then it's not work. So it sounds really exciting what it is that you do. I mean, you've told us about Girl Day events, but why is it important why are these events essential in your organization, and how do they impact the next generation?
Right. And so I think the video we watched at the beginning was a really good summary of Girl Day. And I think also the giving back through FIRST Robotics are really important touch points. So at Girl Day, all of the 3,000 girls in 13 different countries last year came to Collins virtual events or somewhere on site. And I think the really important point there is that it's a touch point. And the same thing with FIRST Robotics applies, that these kids who are participating in robotics are building and designing things, but they're also learning how to communicate, and they're learning teamwork, and they're learning how to solve problems as a group, which are all critical to any career you'll ever have, right? You don't do any work in a bubble. So the touch points with other people, I think, are really important pieces here, especially with real world mentors and role models. So both in FIRST Robotics and in Girl Day, you get that hands-on experience, but you also get those touch points with people who are doing work you might be interested in doing later on. And so they're hands-on places to fail. They're hands-on places to learn from your failures, which is the critical point here. And it's a safe place for students to figure out what they want to be when they grow up and interact with people who are doing the work right now. So I coordinate the Girl Day event for Melbourne, Florida, the site that I work at. And I volunteered at every event. And I think from an employee standpoint or a volunteer standpoint, my favorite thing is when the girls get their activity working, or they get to fly the flight simulator that we have in one of the engineering labs, because it just lights a spark in their mind to say, I could do that. And like Edith, you were saying, everybody wants to be a pilot, but there's so much that has to happen before the pilot can fly the plane that's just as innovative and creative, and you have to implement problem-solving skills to be able to get to the pilot flying the plane. And I think these events really provide the background and the basics to inspire youth to say, what else do I need to do to get there?
Exactly. And you have such a big title, and maybe that's what people are not able to piece together with what we normally know. We know engineers are people who work with tools or maybe do mathematics, or pilots fly the plane. But you said there's so much more that has to be going on in the background. So tell us, what is new product development? What do you do?
Yeah, and so I think what's really important here is nothing gets put on an airplane without a whole team of people in the background working to design, develop, and manufacture the product. And I really work with the manufacturing element of that. So I serve as kind of the liaison between design engineering and on the floor product manufacturing, where my job really is to make sure that everything the design engineers come up with and their initial builds and their prototypes are manufacturable for the floor. There's something that people can actually put together, which really I got from FIRST Robotics, right? It's, you have to build a robot, and sometimes you'll use Legos, which are very easy to stack together. Things we design and the communication things we put on aircraft should be similar. It shouldn't be this massive puzzle to put something together. And so my job is really trying to break the design down into its simplest steps to be able to assemble it easily, repeatably, and safely every single time. So it makes it to the aircraft and it works every time. Which I really, oh, go ahead, sorry.
What kind of skills, what kind of knowledge does somebody need to be able to do that?
Yeah, and so I think really this ties us back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier before this started, is you can't be what you can't see, right? So I didn't know what an engineer was until I started in high school. So I didn't know what skills I needed to be an engineer. I knew what a teacher did because I was in school every day. I knew what a librarian was because I went to the library pretty often with my family. I'd been to the bank before, so I knew what a banker does. But I don't think I would have been able to explain to you what a manufacturing engineer and new product introduction was when I was 14. But being able to kind of participate in a hands-on activity with Collins's support when I was in high school got me to the point where really the core skills that were important to me moving into college were critical thinking, the ability to not give up, right? Because nothing will work on the first try, and that's okay. It really is what you do after that first try that matters, as well as just the ability to ask important questions, which I think, you know, your 10-year-olds are really, really good at asking why all of the time, right? That just don't lose that skill and you're a part of the way there, right? A lot of my job is asking, why are we building it this way? Why does this have to be located here? Why does this have to be in this position and use this tool? Why can't we do it a different way, or why can't we do it better? So that really, at its heart, is the core of engineering in general, is just asking why and not being okay with the answer right off the bat. So those are really the basic skills I think that are critical to kind of engineers, or really the aviation industry in general, because if you can ask why and you're satisfied with the answer, then you've been successful.
Wow, that's amazing. And you've reminded me of something that the CEO of Rwanda said yesterday, that you have to be, well, one of the things that she wished she could do, go back and do, was say yes a lot more. So saying yes for me is also being able to ask the questions, being able to put yourself in spaces where you can open yourself to more different things, or a wide variety of opportunities that expose you to the next thing. And I really like what you said about you cannot be what you cannot see. And you talked a lot about some of the people who allowed you to see into the industry. Tell us a little bit about your role models. And I know a number of them are men, but I'd also like to hear about some of the women role models you've had in your life and how they've challenged you to become a mentor from their mentorship.
Mm-hmm. And so I really think the critical part here is you don't have to be the first one. I think it was the important part about role models is if you have someone who looks like you. For me, it was a female engineer. It was my cousin when I was pretty young, has an engineering degree, and she was the first engineer I'd ever met. And it was like I might not be the most, there might not be a majority of women on the team I'm on, but I'm not the only one in this space. And so I think the critical piece here, regardless of if your role models are female or male, is that you can feel like you belong in that space. And I like what you just said about being open to opportunities, is if you feel like you belong in that space, you'll be comfortable saying, I'd like to do this, or I think I'd be good at this. Can I join this team doing a special project? And so I think being able to build that confidence to say yes to things and being able to put yourself in uncomfortable situations is really important, and something I got from role models as I was growing up. And I think really before this interview this morning, as I was preparing for it, I was very nervous when I was asked to give this presentation, to be totally honest with you. So I called up several of my mentors and I just said, hey, what do you think is the most critical thing I should share here as a mentor of mine? Or really, I was wondering why I was asked to give this presentation, and I had several mentors say, hey, you know, you're good at this and you've been doing this for a long time. I think you have an important story to share. And I think that's really what mentors and role models are there to do, is they're there to push you and inspire you and encourage you. And I think with youth, that becomes even more critical, because again, youth see teachers, they see their parents every day, and teachers are there to teach you, yes, but they also have to give you a grade, where a mentor is literally just there to be proud of you with everything you do. They're not giving you a grade, they're not your parent at home, they're not responsible for taking you everywhere during the day. They're literally just there to be proud of you. And I think that's really critical to this, is like you were saying earlier, how do you know what you can achieve if you don't try? So thank you to all of my mentors who got me here, right? But yeah.
And how do you think you are impacting, how are you mentoring?
And so I think it's really critical to me to give back, right? Because Adriana Johnson, when I was 17 years old in 2013, said, hey, I think you'd be a good fit at Collins. Come talk to me about an internship in a year. And, my mentors here today said, hey, I think you can do this. You've been doing this for a minute. And so really that spark has continued that cycle where I want to provide that spark to others. I like watching people succeed. And so I know in your introduction, you said I'd worked with over 1,000 students, and every single one of them has a really, really important story to tell and a really, really important individual personality to share. And I am just honored that I've been able to be a part of that, because I've had some students who neither of their parents have maybe gone to college, and I've worked with their robotics team, and they've said, I would like to go to Iowa State, where I went to school for my undergraduate degree, and be an engineer because you worked with me. And I think I'd like to try to job shadow you one day just to see what you do, because it sounds interesting, but I don't know what an industrial engineer does. And so I think it's been really cool to see that cycle kind of continue. I've been working with robotics teams for 12 years at this point, and there's 5 girls that I've worked with who are in a various stage of their industrial engineering career at Iowa State University, working on their undergraduate degree, because I've worked with their robotics team and because I sat down and formed that connection with them. And I think it's just really sweet when one of my professors, when I was an undergraduate, will shoot me an email and say, hey, is this new student one of yours? And it's always fun to say, yes, that one, Carly Mock, who's a freshman at Iowa State now, is one of mine. She's I'm the reason she's at Iowa State now. So it's that personal fulfillment that I get from mentoring other students, as well as being able to watch them succeed and being able to push them to try something outside of their comfort zone.
Wow, that's so cool how you are also able to be proud of the people who've passed through your hands in some way, just the same way you said, your mentors have been proud of the work that you've done. And I mean, it's a full cycle of giving back and paying it forward. And the impact becomes greater, like a ripple in an ocean. The ripple becomes bigger with the next cycle that it goes into. So I really hope that the next generation of people, the people who you've impacted, will have an even greater impact. You said something about opening up the industry. People don't understand what his company does until they get a sneak peek inside of that company. So how do you see, well, you've talked a lot about how you've seen this happen in Collins Aerospace, but what would you tell other organizations, many of whom are listening here? Perhaps Rwanda or Kenya Airways is listening, or even AFRAA, and we see a lot of older people and we don't always understand what it is that they do, but what do you think the organizations that are listening here need to do to be able to reach out to the next generation?
One, I think it's really easy. I know some people are sometimes intimidated by, honestly, a classroom full of elementary school students or 10-year-olds, right? Because a classroom of 25 10-year-olds is scary, because who knows what they're going to say, right? And it can be intimidating, it can be difficult, but it really is that first step, right? It is communicating to a group of 10-year-olds what you do at work, and it could be just a classroom, it could be at the library, it could be just at the local community center or something, but showing up is the first step, right? And showing up is easy. It might be the long-term pieces that are a little more challenging, but if you can show up to an event and you can be excited to be there, that's step one. And that really will get a lot of people interested. I actually just organized an event at Iowa State for Collins around going back to school for the year. And they also just had their fall career fair, where one student who had come to that event that I organized also came to the career fair to talk to an employee. And she said, I came to talk to you today because you looked like you were having fun at the kickoff event. Right? You looked like you wanted to be there and you were excited to be there that day. So that's why I'm interested in your company, is because I think you'd be a fun company to work for. So it really is showing up, and that will pay dividends by itself, because people will then begin to seek you out as a company they want to learn more about, right? Because spending 3 hours at a kickoff event, super easy. Continuing that relationship, if it's maintained by the people you influenced at that event, much, much easier than you trying to force a relationship with someone you've never met before.
Wow. And you said it earlier that, and you just said it again, that the organizations will then be sought out by people who are interested, passionate, qualified, and competent, as was spoken about earlier, into the industry. And I think that pays back, not just in terms of getting the best out of the employees, but I think it also turns into profit for the organizations, which at the end of the day, everybody wants to make a profit. What about the young people? What do you feel they get from organizations who are passionate about them?
Mm-hmm. They get a career path. They get to be somewhere that they want to be in the future. And so I think really it's those role models, right? And that pays both ways, because I learn as much from 10-year-olds as I think I teach 10-year-olds. And I think that supports your employees, because if you can communicate something to a group of 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds who will ask you the most ridiculous questions, you can communicate to anybody, right? So any presentation you ever give, if it's not to a bunch of 12-year-olds, you're set if you're comfortable talking to middle school students. But I think really what the students get is a safe place to succeed and to fail. They get to develop their passions, because maybe they come to an event and they say, all right, this company sponsored an engineering event, and I don't know that I want to be an engineer, but I appreciate that the company was involved. So I want to find out what else they do, because an aviation company is not just engineers. It is business development, it is marketing, it is communications leads. There's so much more that goes into making an aviation company work, and not just a pilot, like we said earlier. So it's that networking piece. It is the talking to people outside of their normal circle, right? Because you'll see parents, you'll see friends at school, you'll see teachers. But if you go to an event where you get to interact with people you've never met before, you have to learn how to communicate with them. And it's the ability to grow. So students are able to, one, like I said, find their passions, but get that hands-on experience and get more comfortable with themselves too. So I think it's really critical, and it's a win for everyone in the situation where your young people are learning and your communities are building a pipeline.
Well, and I think you've told us why every company here should be able to follow the Collins Aerospace approach, the redefining features, getting more young people, getting more diverse communities involved, because everybody is bringing in a different flavor that in the end enhances the product that the company is trying to deliver. I know a lot of people don't understand, say, what Swissport does as an aviation company, but like you said, every different company does something different. You don't have to be one single thing. And a lot of the skills we learn are transferable from one industry to another. And what you understand, say even what you're doing in engineering, would be able to translate into ICAO to an understanding of how, you know, some of this equipment impacts regulation. So thank you very much for that. So you've gotten me excited about hosting a Girl Day event. Now, the beauty about the world as it is right now is that you don't have to be in Melbourne, Florida to be able to participate in a Girl Day event. So how do I, here in Nairobi, Kenya, participate or organize a Girl Day event?
So again, like I said, it really is just showing up. And so your first step is finding a group of volunteers, and I like to phrase it as voluntelling volunteers that they'll be involved in this event. So really it's coordinating a group of interested people who say, I think I'd like to work with some people. I think I'd like to work and develop some young talent. So that's step one, is finding the people. Step two is finding the resources and the activities. And there are so many activities out there already around hands-on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math activities that you don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to develop your own activities from scratch, because I feel like, again, some people are intimidated by that. You can just Google hands-on science activities and you'll come up with so many options. From really, it could be as simple as how to best build a paper airplane. And that's related to aviation, right? Paper airplanes fly through the air. And so that's your segue into, how do I talk to this young student about aviation now that they've made a paper airplane and they understand maybe the four forces, lift, drag, and thrust, that make an airplane fly. Now I can talk to them about what I do around aircrafts, because maybe it's not a pilot, and that's fine. So it is finding activities via the internet that will allow you to present material to young students. And then your third step, right? So we've got find your people, find your activities, and now it's find your students. And that could be connecting with a local school. That could be working with your library or even your neighborhood. It does not have to be a large effort right away at the beginning. Again, it's just showing up. So maybe your first Girl Day activity is 10 students, and it's all the kids from your neighborhood, or it's all of the kids of your team at work that want to show up one day and take a tour and do a job shadow. That counts, right? There's no minimum outreach bar you have to meet to be successful. It can be 10 students showing up and taking a tour. So again, that would be just one way to influence youth in the community if you wanted to hold an event. The other ways are find initiatives that already exist and figure out how to support them. So maybe there is a FIRST robotics team in your area that is looking for mentors, and maybe there are companies who are employees at your company that are wanting to give back or invest some time in the community, and you can make that connection. Maybe there is a local science club that needs, I don't know, $50, or they need a donation of cardboard for their next science activity. And if that's something that when you as a company receive boxes in and receive materials through inspection, and what do I do with that cardboard? Maybe your science club needs it to do an egg drop, or needs it to build their next cardboard bridge for a competition or something, right? So your avenues to get to students are completely unlimited, from organizing something yourself to connecting with a local organization. For mentors, materials, it does not have to be fiscal support either. There are so many avenues to get to students.
And that's the organizations here listening. I'm sure you've heard, you do not have to be part of Collins Aerospace events to be able to reach to your communities. You just need to start with what you're doing, with where you are. And I know one of the outcomes I would like to see next year's conference is companies here telling us what they've done to influence other people, to host Girl Day events or young people events to interest them in their company and interest them in the organization. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please post them on the chat. And we do have a question here. What initiatives can youth from Africa benefit from Collins, at Collins Aerospace? So this is relating to Africa.
Yep. So I know that Collins has facilities across Africa and Egypt and South Africa and several other locations. And I know earlier in the day that we heard from a facility in Morocco who has some innovative recruitment strategies. And so I think making connections at those sites, depending on where you're geographically located, can be a big influence in connecting with those companies and those Collins Aerospace sites to inspire youth. I know that our Girl Day initiatives are only continuing to grow, right? So we were in 13 countries that last year. I think that will grow this year as we continue that momentum and that support for girls in aviation and girls in aerospace. I know Collins also has a wide variety of initiatives across STEM, but like you said, redefining futures is not limited to engineering. And so really, I think connecting with those sites or connecting with our corporate social responsibility individuals would be the best way to start building those relationships and forming those volunteer opportunities and inspiration opportunities.
Okay. Well, Ellen, you are such an inspiration to many, and I know you're just one of many, as you told me. There are many other people who have inspiring stories, but many people want to hear more from you. How do they connect with you on LinkedIn or on social media?
Yes. So if you look up Erin Mitchell on LinkedIn, you can connect with me there. My title is New Product Introduction Manufacturing Engineer. So that's a really good way to connect with me there. And maybe Maureen or Edith, we can connect after this to figure out if there's a better way to share that link or that information. But really, I think the first step is LinkedIn is a great place to connect. And I love watching other people succeed. I love watching other organizations succeed. So I'm here to support and provide resources as I can to help you.
Great, thanks. You've heard it from her. And I'll tell you something that Erin said earlier that really impressed me, is that you don't always understand the impact you have until somebody tells you. Erin has had such a great impact on many people, but she's also been impacted. And that's the challenge for us, is how do we impact other people as we have been impacted by those who've come before us. Erin, wrap this up for us. Tell us your parting shots on how young people can, surpass their own expectations.
So I think really the important takeaway here is that community involvement is a win-win-win. It's a win for the companies involved and the organizations involved, because they're developing a talented pipeline of motivated new hires who want to give back and want to be that spark for other people. It is free advertising for those organizations because they'll have people who will come seek them out after the fact. And it's passionate and motivated employees for that organization, which then it's a win for the employees because, like I said, if you can communicate anything to 12-year-olds, you can communicate to anyone. So it's that communication and confidence in what you're saying that will provide dividends for your employees. It also will spark some more innovation, and it will provide employees investment in their community. And if you're invested in your community, you're invested in where you work. And lastly, it's a win for the youth involved. They get role models, they get to build confidence, they get to explore, they get to learn, fail, succeed, and repeat. And they get to communicate with other people. And really, the important part here is that I'm a product of my environment. I'm a product of my mentors and my role models and First Robotics and Collins Aerospace. My success story and being able to speak with you all today is one success story and one example, but really the community involvement, this has the potential to be the success story of so many others if organizations start investing in their youth and start building the next generation to develop that pipeline for the future.
Thanks very much, Erin. You heard it from her. Over to you, Maureen, and I hope you will all connect with Erin, connect with me as well on LinkedIn, and let's hear more inspiring stories at next year's conference.
Yes, and thank you, Edith, for performing a wonderful interview today. I really enjoyed talking with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our guest on stage, Erin, for sharing with us your story. And thank you to Edith for very well moderating that session. We've learned a lot. This is the key message. And we have seen from a beneficiary. Now, this is not just talking about what we should do, but this is talking about what has been done. And from someone who's telling her own story from Collins. So a big heads up to Collins Aerospace, commending you for these initiatives. One recommendation that can come from an African organization as AFRAA is that as these initiatives are being done, let's now have the next guest coming on show being an African beneficiary of these initiatives, telling us about, I am an African, I have benefited from Collins Aerospace program, and that is now where we need to go. We need to do more. We commend you for so much that you've done, but we need to get now more African examples. And the question that came from the floor is, if I am in Africa, I'm interested in being part of these initiatives. So how do I get that? So we will be communicating with Collins Aerospace on how the outreach can be done to African youth, because we need to increase the attractiveness of aviation careers to the young professionals at a very early age, in schools, as well as those who are in their early careers. So that is from AFRAA. Thank you so much for this very insightful session. We will now be proceeding to a break. The break will be for 10 minutes because we had a 10 minutes delay, and we will be starting the next session at 1500 hours 10 Kenyan time. And that will be an interview yet with another Collins Aerospace initiative, the Bet Shikan. And the president of Bet Shikan will be our guest on stage. Please join us for that very insightful session. And let's hear what else is Collins Aerospace doing, because there's so much that we need to learn about and how much we can pick from that to implement in our own region, because we need to have more of these initiatives. So thank you very much. And let us meet at the next session at 1500 hours 10 Kenyan time. A big congrats to all the participants who've joined us today, because you are heroes. Today in Kenya, especially those who are joining us from Kenya, the Mashujaa Day, we are celebrating our heroes who fought for our independence, but each and everyone is a hero in their own specific way. So you're big heroes for joining us on a public holiday, and thank you so much. So see you at the next session. Bye-bye.